The boss was frozen when he saw his lost daughter's ring with the jewelry seller. The afternoon light filtered through the crystal display cases of Chicago's most exclusive jewelry store, casting golden reflections across the marble floors. Jonathan Walker pushed through the heavy glass doors, his footsteps echoing in the quiet showroom. At 50, his salt and pepper hair still held traces of the dark brown it used to be, but his eyes, those deep blue eyes, carried the weight of 18 years' worth of grief. He didn't come here to buy anything. He never did on this day, every year. On this exact date, Jonathan made the same pilgrimage, to this store, to this very spot where it all began, where he'd commissioned a ring that was supposed to be a promise of love, not a reminder of loss. 18 years ago, he'd stood at the custom design counter, sketching out his vision for the jeweler: white gold band, a rose engraved on the side, Elizabeth's favorite flower, and in the center, a sapphire blue stone, the exact color of his daughter Emily's eyes. "For when you grow up, princess," he'd whispered, sliding the ring onto her tiny 5-year-old finger. It had been too big, spinning around comically. Emily had giggled, her eyes sparkling brighter than any gemstone. 2 weeks later, she was gone. It happened at Lincoln Park. Elizabeth had let Emily play on the swings while she took a phone call. Just for a minute, she'd said over and over in the days that followed. Just 1 minute. When she turned back around, Emily wasn't there anymore. The police searched for months, dragged the lake, combed through security footage, interviewed hundreds of people, but there were no leads. No body, no trace. Just a little girl who'd vanished into thin air, taking Jonathan's heart with her. Elizabeth never recovered. The guilt ate her alive from the inside out. 3 years after Emily disappeared, Elizabeth died, officially from pneumonia. But Jonathan knew better. She'd died of a broken heart. She'd died of blame. She couldn't escape. And Jonathan, he'd built an empire on top of his grief. Walker Jewelers now had 47 locations across 12 states, each one a monument to the daughter he'd lost. Every diamond he sold, every emerald, every sapphire, they all carried Emily's memory, whether the customers knew it or not. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you with something?" Jonathan looked up from the display case he'd been staring at without really seeing. A young woman stood before him, mid-20s maybe, with long chestnut brown hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She wore the standard uniform: black slacks, white blouse, name tag. Her smile was polite but tentative, like she wasn't quite sure what to make of the gray-haired man who'd been standing frozen in the middle of the store for the past 5 minutes. "Oh, I'm just..." Jonathan started to give his usual excuse, but the words died in his throat, because that's when he saw it. On her right hand, index finger, a ring, white gold with a rose engraved on the side, and in the center, a sapphire blue stone that caught the light and threw it back like a tiny piece of sky. The exact same ring. The impossible ring. Jonathan's knees went weak. He grabbed the edge of the display case to steady himself, his knuckles turning white from the pressure. The room tilted. His vision narrowed to a tunnel, and at the end of that tunnel was that ring. That ring, sitting on this stranger's hand like it belonged there. "Sir, are you okay?" The young woman stepped closer, concern flooding her features. "Should I call someone?" "That ring." Jonathan's voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. He pointed with a trembling hand. "Where did you get that ring?" The saleswoman glanced down at her own hand, like she'd forgotten she was wearing it. "Oh, this." She touched it gently, a small smile playing at her lips. "It was a gift. My mom said it came with me, from the very beginning." "Your mom?" Jonathan's heart was hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. "What do you mean, came with you?" The young woman seemed confused by his intensity, but something in his face, the desperation maybe, or the raw hope, made her answer, "I was adopted, well, not officially. My mom, Helen, she found me when I was little. She always said this ring was with me when she found me, and that I should keep it safe, that it was important." Jonathan couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The fluorescent lights overhead suddenly seemed too bright, the air too thick. "What's your name?" he managed. "Grace Miller. Not Emily, but that ring." "How old are you, Grace?" 23? "Why, sir, are you sure you're okay? You look really pale." 23. Emily would be 23 now. Emily would be exactly 23 years old. Jonathan's mind raced through the possibilities, each one more impossible than the last. He'd commissioned that ring himself, one of a kind, custom-made. There wasn't another one like it in the entire world. He'd made sure of that. It was supposed to be unique, special, just for his daughter. So how the hell was it sitting on this stranger's finger? I need to. Jonathan backed away from the counter, nearly stumbling over his own feet. I'm sorry, I have to go. Sir, wait. But Jonathan was already moving toward the door, his breath coming in short gasps. He burst out onto Michigan Avenue, the cool October air hitting his face like a slap. People brushed past him on the crowded sidewalk, absorbed in their own worlds, completely unaware that Jonathan's entire universe had just been turned upside down. He leaned against the building's limestone facade, pressing his palms against the cold stone. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably Margaret, his sister, wondering where he was. She always worried on this anniversary, always checked in to make sure he was okay. But Jonathan couldn't answer, couldn't move, could barely breathe, because that ring existed. Here, now, after 18 years. And it was on the hand of a young woman who was exactly the right age, with brown hair and brown eyes, who'd been found as a child and raised by someone named Helen Miller. Jonathan pulled out his phone with shaking hands, scrolling through his contacts until he found the name he needed: Thomas Rivera, private investigator, former cop who'd worked Emily's case all those years ago before retiring in frustration at hitting dead end after dead end. The phone rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. Walker, that you? Thomas, Jonathan's voice cracked. I need you to investigate someone. Today. Right now. Slow down. What's going on? I saw the ring, Thomas, Emily's ring, on a saleswoman at my store. A 23-year-old woman who was found as a child. Silence on the other end. Then, Jesus, Jonathan, are you sure? I'm sure about the ring. I made it. There's only one. I'll be there in an hour. Jonathan ended the call and slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold sidewalk. His expensive suit be damned. Passers-by gave him strange looks, probably thinking he was having some kind of breakdown. They weren't wrong. Inside the store, through the glass doors, he could see Grace Miller helping another customer, completely unaware that the man who owned the entire chain had just fled from her like she was a ghost. Maybe she was a ghost. Maybe he'd finally cracked after 18 years and was seeing things that weren't there. But no, that ring was real. He'd seen it, touched that same ring with his own hands 18 years ago when he'd placed it on his daughter's finger. Jonathan pulled himself to his feet, straightening his jacket. He looked back through the glass one more time. Grace Miller was laughing at something the customer had said, her whole face lighting up. And for just a second, just the briefest moment, Jonathan saw Emily in that smile. He turned and walked toward his car, his mind already racing with questions that had no answers. Not yet anyway, but he'd find them. Whatever it took, however long it took, he'd find the truth about that ring and the young woman wearing it, even if that truth destroyed him. Jonathan didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. He'd spent hours in his study at the Lake Forest mansion, surrounded by boxes he hadn't opened in years, photo albums, home videos, Emily's baby clothes still sealed in plastic bins that Elizabeth had carefully labeled before everything fell apart. In one particular photo, 5-year-old Emily sat on his lap, holding up her right hand to show off the ring. It was too big for her tiny finger, but she'd been so proud. Look, Daddy, I'm a princess now. The ring had caught the camera flash, the sapphire gleaming like a fragment of summer sky. Jonathan held the photo up to the lamplight, studying every detail. The rose engraving, the specific cut of the stone, the delicate filigree work along the band. He'd spent weeks with the jeweler perfecting that design. There was no way someone had replicated it. No way Grace Miller just happened to have an identical ring. It was the same ring. It had to be. By the time dawn broke over Lake Michigan, Jonathan had made his decision. He showered, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and drove back into the city. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his heart raced like he was 19 again, not 50. Thomas had called twice already, promising to start digging into Helen Miller's background, but Jonathan needed to talk to Grace first, face to face. Before lawyers and investigators and cold hard facts got involved, he needed to look into her eyes and see if there was any trace of Emily left inside this stranger. The jewelry store didn't open until 10, but Jonathan had keys to every location in the chain. He let himself in through the back entrance, past the security office where Martinez was just starting his shift. "Mr. Walker, everything okay, sir?" "Fine, Martinez. Just need to catch up on some paperwork." It was a lie, but Martinez didn't question it. Nobody questioned Jonathan Walker. He was the boss, the owner, the man who signed the paychecks. Jonathan positioned himself in his office, really just a converted storage room with a desk and a filing cabinet, where he could see the sales floor through the security monitors. At 9:47, Grace Miller walked through the employee entrance, right on time. She clocked in, tied on her apron, and started her opening routine like it was any other Thursday. She had no idea her entire world was about to change. Jonathan waited until 10:15. After the morning rush of customers looking at engagement rings had thinned out, then he walked onto the sales floor, trying to look casual, like he wasn't having a minor heart attack with every step. Grace saw him coming, and her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, Mr. Walker, I didn't expect to see you here. I mean, I know you own the company, but you don't usually..." She trailed off, clearly flustered. "I wanted to apologize," Jonathan said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "For yesterday, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "No, it's okay. I was just worried about you. You looked like you'd seen a ghost." "You have no idea," Jonathan thought. "Grace, would you mind if we talked, somewhere private? I promise I'm not crazy," despite what yesterday might have suggested. She hesitated, glancing at her coworker Melissa, who was watching the interaction with undisguised curiosity. Sure. I guess my break isn't until 11, but I'll square it with your manager, please. It's important." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she nodded and led him to the small break room in the back. It smelled like burnt coffee and microwaved lunches. They sat across from each other at a Formica table that had seen better days, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Jonathan didn't know where to start. How did you ask someone if they might be your daughter who disappeared 18 years ago? How did you begin that conversation without sounding completely insane? "That ring," he finally said, nodding toward her hand. "You said your mother told you it came with you. Can you tell me more about that?" Grace looked down at the ring, touching it almost unconsciously. It was clearly a habit, something she did when she was nervous or thinking. "I don't know much, honestly, Mom. Helen, she wasn't big on talking about the past. She always said what mattered was that we had each other, you know, that we were a family. But she found you. You weren't born to her." "No." Grace's voice got quieter. "I don't really remember anything before I was 5 or 6. Mom said I guess you'd call it abandoned. She found me and took me in. Never went through official adoption channels or anything. She was scared they'd take me away, put me in the system." Jonathan's throat felt tight. "Do you remember anything from before Helen found you?" Grace was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rose engraving on the ring. "Sometimes I have these. I don't know. They're not really memories, more like feelings or dreams. Maybe. There's a woman with brown hair singing to me, the smell of jasmine, a man's voice reading bedtime stories." She looked up, her brown eyes meeting his. "But I don't know if those are real memories or just things I made up because I wanted to remember." Elizabeth had worn jasmine perfume. Jonathan had read Emily bedtime stories every single night. "The ring," he pressed, his voice rough. "Why did Helen give it to you?" "She kept it until I turned 15. Said it was mine, that it had been with me when she found me, and that I should always wear it, that it was important." Grace paused. "Mr. Walker, why are you asking me all this? What's so special about this ring?" Jonathan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the photo he'd been carrying since last night, the one of Emily on his lap, showing off her ring. He slid it across the table. Grace picked it up, studying it closely. Her face went pale. That's the same ring. Exactly the same. That's my daughter, Emily. She disappeared 18 years ago. She was 5 years old, and I had that ring custom made for her. One of a kind. There's no other ring like it in the world." Grace's hand started trembling. The photo fluttered back down to the table. "What are you saying?" I'm saying that ring shouldn't exist. Not on your hand. Not anywhere, unless... Jonathan couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say it out loud because saying it would make it real. And if it was real and he was wrong, it would break him all over again. You think I'm her? Grace whispered. You think I'm your daughter. I don't know what to think, but I need to find out. Will you let me investigate this? Let me hire someone to look into Helen Miller's background. Into where you came from. Grace stood up abruptly, backing away from the table like it had burned her. This is insane. Helen was my mother. She raised me. She loved me. I'm not saying she didn't, but Grace, look at that ring. Look at that photo. You're 23 years old. You were found around age 5. You don't remember your life before that. Jonathan stood too, but didn't move closer. Please. I lost my daughter 18 years ago. My wife died from the grief of it. I've spent nearly 2 decades wondering what happened to Emily. If she's alive, if she's okay. His voice cracked. That ring is the first real lead I've had since she disappeared. I'm begging you. Let me find the truth. Grace wrapped her arms around herself, looking suddenly very young and very scared. Helen died 3 years ago. Cancer. She can't answer any questions. Did she have any family? Anyone who might know more? She had a sister, Louise. They weren't close, but... Grace took a shaky breath. Okay, you can investigate. But Mr. Walker, if this turns out to be nothing, if I'm not Emily, you need to let it go. You need to let me go. Jonathan nodded, even though he knew he couldn't promise that. Because in his gut, in the deepest part of his soul, he already knew the truth. Grace Miller was Emily Walker. His daughter had been alive this whole time, working in his own jewelry store, and he'd had no idea. The question was, how did she end up with Helen Miller? And why had Helen taken her? I'll be in touch, Jonathan said quietly. And Grace, thank you for giving me a chance to find out. She didn't respond, just stood there holding her right hand against her chest, covering the ring like she was protecting it, or maybe protecting herself from what it might mean. Jonathan left the break room and walked out of the store, pulling out his phone before he even hit the sidewalk. Thomas, I talked to her. I need you to dig into everything. Helen Miller, her sister Louise, whatever records you can find from 23 years ago. Medical records, employment history, everything. Already on it, Thomas said. And Jonathan, I pulled the old case files. There's something you should know. Helen Miller's name is in there. She worked as a domestic for a family 2 blocks from Lincoln Park, the same week Emily disappeared. Jonathan stopped walking, his heart pounding in his ears. She was there. Helen was right there when Emily vanished. Looks that way. I'm tracking down the sister, Louise Miller. Lives on the south side. Give me 48 hours. I'll have answers. Jonathan ended the call and stood on Michigan Avenue, watching the city move around him. Somewhere in the building behind him, Grace Miller was probably having a breakdown. Her entire identity called into question by a stranger and an impossible ring. He should feel guilty about that, but all he felt was hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. For the first time in 18 years, Thomas Rivera sat in his cramped South Side office, surrounded by file boxes and coffee-stained documents that dated back to when he'd still been on the force. The Emily Walker case had haunted him for 18 years, the one that got away, the one that ended his career in frustration and failure. Now, maybe, he had a chance to make it right. He'd spent the last 2 days digging through old records, making calls to people who owed him favors, pulling threads that had gone cold nearly 2 decades ago, and what he'd found made his gut twist with a mixture of hope and dread. Helen Miller had worked for the Ashford family in 2007, wealthy residents of a brownstone just 2 blocks from Lincoln Park. She'd been their housekeeper for 6 months, ending her employment abruptly on September 15th, the same day Emily Walker disappeared. That couldn't be coincidence. Thomas picked up his phone and called Jonathan. I've got something. Helen Miller quit her job the exact day Emily vanished. No notice, no explanation, just walked away. Jonathan's voice came through tight and controlled. What else? Grace Miller doesn't have a legitimate birth certificate. The one on file was issued when she was 7. A delayed registration claiming home birth. It's fake, Jonathan. Whoever filed it knew enough to make it look official. But it's not. So Helen took her. She took Emily and just disappeared with her. Looks that way. I'm working on tracking down Louise Miller, Helen's sister. She's still alive, lives in Bridgeport. If anyone knows what really happened, it's her. Find her, Jonathan said. Whatever it costs. Thomas hung up and stared at the photo on his desk. 5-year-old Emily Walker with her bright smile and that distinctive ring. If Grace really was Emily, then Helen Miller had stolen this child and raised her for 18 years. The question was why, and whether Grace had any idea about the truth of her origins. Meanwhile, at the jewelry store, Grace was falling apart. She'd called in sick for the first time in 3 years, unable to face the curious stares of her co-workers or the weight of Jonathan Walker's desperate hope. Instead, she sat in her tiny Logan Square apartment, staring at the ring on her finger like it was a bomb about to explode. Everything she thought she knew about her life was crumbling. Helen had been her mother, the only mother she'd ever known. Stern sometimes, but loving. Always working 2 jobs to keep food on the table, to pay for Grace's art supplies, to make sure she had everything she needed. Helen had been her entire world. But what if it had all been a lie? Grace pulled out the old shoebox she kept in her closet, the one with Helen's few possessions after she died. A silver locket with no picture inside, a prayer book in Spanish, a bundle of letters tied with ribbon, and tucked at the bottom, a newspaper clipping from September 2007. Grace had never paid much attention to it before. It was yellowed and fragile. The ink faded, but now, with shaking hands, she unfolded it carefully. The headline made her blood run cold. 5-year-old girl vanishes from Lincoln Park. Family desperate for answers. Below it was a photo. A little girl with brown hair and bright eyes, wearing a yellow sundress, and on her hand, clearly visible even in the grainy newsprint, was the ring. Grace's ring. She dropped the clipping like it had burned her, her breath coming in short gasps. Helen had kept this. All these years, Helen had kept a newspaper article about a missing child. A child who was wearing the exact ring that Grace now wore. The doorbell rang, making Grace jump. She stumbled to the door, not even checking the peephole before pulling it open. Jonathan Walker stood in the hallway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry to just show up, but I couldn't wait. I needed to." He stopped, seeing her face. What happened? Grace wordlessly handed him the newspaper clipping. Jonathan took it with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the familiar headline. He'd lived through the nightmare of those first few weeks when every paper in Chicago had run Emily's photo. When his phone had rung constantly with false leads and cruel pranks. When hope had drained away, drop by agonizing drop. "She kept it," Grace whispered. "Helen kept a newspaper article about your daughter, about Emily. Why would she do that unless she knew," Jonathan finished. "Unless she knew exactly who you were." They stood there in the doorway, 2 strangers bound together by an impossible truth that was becoming more real by the second. "There's more," Jonathan said quietly. Thomas found out that Helen worked 2 blocks from the park where Emily disappeared. She quit her job the same day, just walked away without explanation. Grace felt the walls closing in. No, that's not possible. Helen wouldn't. She couldn't. But even as she said it, memories were surfacing. Strange memories she'd always dismissed. The way Helen would sometimes look at her with such profound sadness. The way she'd refused to let Grace take school photos for years. How they'd moved 3 times before Grace turned 10. Always to different neighborhoods. Always with Helen looking over her shoulder like they were running from something. "I want to remember," Grace said suddenly. "I need to remember what happened. Who I was before." Jonathan stepped into the apartment, and Grace closed the door behind him. They sat on her worn couch, the one she'd bought secondhand from a thrift store. And for the next hour, Jonathan showed her everything. Photos of Emily as a baby, as a toddler, as a little girl. Videos of birthday parties and Christmas mornings. He told her about Elizabeth, about their life before everything shattered. And slowly, like light filtering through fog, things started to feel familiar. Not memories exactly, but echoes of memories. A sense of recognition that Grace couldn't quite place. When Jonathan played a video of Elizabeth singing a lullaby, her voice soft and melodic, Grace felt tears streaming down her face without knowing why. "I know that song," she whispered. "I don't remember learning it, but I know it." Jonathan's voice was rough with emotion. Elizabeth sang it to Emily every night. They sat in silence, the weight of 18 years pressing down on them both. Finally, Grace spoke. "What happens now?" "We prove it," Jonathan said. "A DNA test. It's the only way to know for certain. And if it's true, if I am Emily," Grace wrapped her arms around herself, "then everything I thought I knew about my mother, about my life, it was all built on a kidnapping. Helen stole me from you. We don't know the whole story yet. Thomas is tracking down Helen's sister. Maybe she can tell us what really happened." Grace looked down at the ring that had started all of this. "I used to dream about having a father, someone who'd be there for school plays and graduations. Helen did her best, but she was always working, always tired. I used to wonder what it would be like to have a real family." She met Jonathan's eyes. "But not like this. I never wanted it like this." "Neither did I," Jonathan said softly. "But here we are." Before Grace could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her swipe to accept. Grace Miller. A woman's voice. Older, hesitant. "Yes. My name is Louise Miller. I was Helen's sister. I heard someone was asking questions about Helen and about you, and I think it's time I told someone the truth." Grace's hand tightened on the phone. She looked at Jonathan, who was watching her intently. "What truth?" "The truth about where you really came from, and what my sister did." Across town, in a pristine office overlooking Lake Michigan, Margaret Walker was making a phone call of her own. "I need information," she said crisply, "about an employee at one of our stores, Grace Miller. Find out everything. Where she lives, who she knows, what she's hiding." Margaret had built her entire life around Walker Jewelers after Emily disappeared and Elizabeth died. She'd been the one holding everything together while Jonathan fell apart. She'd been the one making the hard decisions, managing the expansion, turning grief into profit. And she wasn't about to let some random sales girl with a convenient sob story destroy everything she'd built. If Grace Miller thought she could waltz in and claim to be the long-lost Emily Walker, she had another thing coming. Margaret would make sure of that. Louise Miller's house sat at the end of a narrow street in Bridgeport, a neighborhood that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged, and cats prowled the overgrown yard like sentinels. But when Louise opened the door, her eyes were sharp and clear, the eyes of someone who'd been carrying a heavy secret for far too long. "You're Grace," she said, studying the young woman on her doorstep. "You look just like Helen described, and you..." She turned to Jonathan. "You must be Mr. Walker. Come in. We need to talk." The living room was cramped and cluttered, filled with photographs of people Grace had never met, and doilies on every surface. Louise gestured for them to sit on a floral couch that smelled faintly of mothballs, and asked if they wanted tea. They both declined. "I knew this day would come eventually," Louise said, settling into a worn recliner. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. "Helen made me promise never to tell, but she's been gone 3 years now, and I'm 70 years old. I won't go to my grave carrying her sins." "What happened?" Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, I need to know." Louise took a deep breath. Helen worked for a wealthy family near Lincoln Park. The Ashfords, nice people, treated her well. September 15th, 2007, she'd just finished her shift and was walking through the park on her way to the bus stop. Louise's eyes grew distant, like she was watching the memory play out. That's when she saw it. "Saw what?" Jonathan leaned forward. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, sitting on the swings crying her heart out. Helen watched for a few minutes, expecting someone to come get her, but nobody came. The girl just kept crying, calling for her mama. Louise's voice dropped. Helen said she walked away at first, told herself it wasn't her business, but something made her turn back, and the little girl was still there, all alone. Grace felt sick, so she took me. She picked you up, asked where your mama was. You were hysterical, barely making sense. Helen said she'd help you find your mama, so she walked around the park with you for maybe 20 minutes. But the longer she held you..." Louise trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. Helen had always wanted a baby. She'd had 3 miscarriages, and her husband left her after the last one. She was 45 years old, living alone in that tiny apartment, cleaning other people's houses. And here was this beautiful little girl who needed someone. So she just took her. Jonathan's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. She just decided to steal someone's child. It wasn't like that, Louise said defensively. Helen wasn't evil. She was broken. And in that moment, holding this crying child who'd been abandoned, Emily wasn't abandoned. Jonathan stood abruptly. She was with her mother. Elizabeth turned away for 1 minute to take a phone call. 1 minute. Helen didn't know that, Louise said quietly. She thought someone had left you there on purpose. She convinced herself she was saving you. Grace's hands were shaking. What about after? When she saw the news reports, the search parties, the missing child posters? She must have known then. She did. By then, you were calling her Mama. You'd stopped asking about your old life. Helen had moved to a different neighborhood, changed your name to Grace. After her mother, she told herself you were better off with her, that she could give you a good life. A good life. Jonathan's laugh was bitter. While my wife died of grief, while I spent 18 years not knowing if my daughter was alive or dead, Louise flinched. I'm not defending what she did. I'm just telling you what happened. Helen loved Grace, loved Emily, more than anything in this world. But that love was built on a terrible choice. It ate her alive, the cancer that killed her. I think it was guilt, eating her from the inside out. Grace stood and walked to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. Outside, one of the cats was watching a bird with predatory focus. She felt like that bird, exposed, vulnerable, unaware of the danger until it was too late. Did she ever think about bringing me back? Grace asked without turning around. Every day, Louise said, especially in those last few months. She talked about confessing, about trying to make it right, but she was scared. Scared of prison, scared of losing you, scared of what the truth would do to you. So she kept the secret, made me promise to keep it too. But you're telling us now, Jonathan said, because you deserve to know. And because Louise pulled a manila envelope from beneath a stack of magazines on the side table. Helen left this, said if anyone ever came asking about Grace's past, I should give it to them. Grace turned, her heart pounding. What is it? A letter. And something else. Louise handed the envelope to Grace with trembling hands. Grace opened it slowly, pulling out 2 items. The first was a letter, Helen's handwriting shaky but unmistakable. The second was a birth certificate, not the fake one Grace had always known, but an original Emily Rose Walker, born March 3, 2002. Parents Jonathan Walker and Elizabeth Walker. The room spun. Grace sat down hard on the couch, the birth certificate clutched in her hands. Read the letter, Louise said gently. Grace unfolded the paper, her eyes blurring with tears as she read Helen's words. My dearest Grace, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally come out. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry for what I did, for the lie I built our lives on. I told myself I was saving you, that you were abandoned and needed me. But deep down, I always knew. I knew I'd stolen you from someone who loved you. Every time you called me Mama, my heart broke a little more, because you should have been calling someone else Mama, someone who deserved you more than I did. I kept the ring because it was yours. It was the only piece of your real life I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I kept the newspaper clipping to remind myself of what I'd done, of the family I'd destroyed. I thought, maybe someday I'd be brave enough to make it right. I wasn't. If your real father is reading this, Mr. Walker, I'm sorry isn't enough. I stole 18 years from you. I stole your daughter and your wife's peace. I stole Emily's childhood with you. There's no forgiveness for that, but please know that I loved her. I loved Grace, loved Emily, with everything I had. I gave her the best life I could. It's not enough. It will never be enough, but it's all I can offer, Grace. You were the light in my dark world. You were the reason I kept going when everything else fell apart. But you deserved better than me. You deserved your real family, your real life. I'm sorry I was too selfish and too cowardly to give that back to you. Please forgive me if you can. I'll understand if you can't. Love always. Helen Grace finished reading and sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. The letter shook in her hands. Jonathan moved to sit beside her, not touching, just present. She loved you, he said quietly. In her own broken way, she loved you. She stole me. Grace's voice was hollow. Everything I thought I knew, every memory, every moment, was built on a crime. Helen wasn't my mother. She was my kidnapper. She was both, Louise said. People aren't just one thing. Helen did something terrible, but she also raised you, cared for you, loved you. Both things are true. Grace looked at Jonathan, this stranger who was her father. The DNA test. We still need to do it, don't we, for legal proof? Yes, but Grace... Jonathan's voice broke. Emily, I already know. I've known since I saw that ring. You're my daughter. You're Emily. I don't feel like Emily. I don't remember being Emily. You don't have to remember. We'll figure it out together. Louise cleared her throat. There's one more thing you should know. Helen told me that when she took Emily, took Grace, from the park. She saw someone, a woman, well-dressed, standing by the trees watching. Helen thought maybe that woman had left Emily there. But when Helen picked the child up, the woman just turned and walked away. Jonathan froze. Someone was watching. Someone saw Emily alone and did nothing. Helen said the woman looked familiar, like she'd seen her before at the Ashford house. Maybe a visitor. She couldn't be sure. Louise shrugged. It might not mean anything, but Jonathan's mind was racing. Someone had been there. Someone had seen Emily alone and vulnerable. Someone who might have answers about what really happened that day. Grace stood, the letter and birth certificate still in her hands. I need to go. I need time to process this. Of course, Jonathan said, standing too. But Grace, Emily, can we do the DNA test tomorrow, just to make everything official? She nodded numbly. Tomorrow. They left Louise's house in silence, the weight of Helen's confession pressing down on them both. As they reached the street, Grace turned to Jonathan. My whole life is a lie. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about where I came from, it's gone. Who am I supposed to be now? Jonathan wanted to say the right thing, wanted to fix this, but what words could possibly be enough? You're you, he finally said. Grace, Emily, both, neither. You get to decide who you are. Not Helen, not me, you. Grace looked down at the ring on her finger, the ring that had started this whole impossible chain of events. This ring was supposed to make me a princess, she whispered. Instead, it made me a ghost. The DNA testing facility was sterile and cold, all white walls and fluorescent lights that made everyone look vaguely ill. Grace sat in the waiting room, bouncing her knee anxiously while Jonathan filled out paperwork at the front desk. She'd barely slept the night before, Helen's letter playing on repeat in her mind. I stole you from someone who loved you. The technician who called them back was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and efficient hands. She explained the process. Simple cheek swabs, results in 48 hours, 99.9% accuracy. Nothing to worry about. Except Grace was worried about everything. She watched as the technician swabbed the inside of her cheek, then Jonathan's, sealing each sample in separate tubes with color-coded labels. The whole thing took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes to potentially confirm that her entire identity had been a lie. We'll call as soon as the results are in, the technician said cheerfully, like she was scheduling a dentist appointment instead of determining whether Grace's whole world was about to implode. In the parking lot, Jonathan turned to Grace. Can I buy you breakfast or lunch? What time is it even? Grace checked her phone. 11:47 a.m. She had 15 text messages from her coworker Melissa, 3 missed calls from her apartment building's office, and 2 voicemails from numbers she didn't recognize. I should probably get home, face whatever's waiting for me. Let me drive you at least. She wanted to say. No, wanted to maintain some shred of independence. But the truth was, she felt untethered, like she might float away if someone wasn't anchoring her to the ground. Okay. They drove in silence through Chicago traffic, past the glittering storefronts on Michigan Avenue where Grace used to window shop on her lunch breaks, dreaming of a life she couldn't afford. Now she might be the daughter of the man who owned half those stores. It felt surreal, like watching someone else's life through a window. When they pulled up to her apartment building, Grace noticed it immediately. The news van parked across the street, the woman with a microphone and a cameraman beside her. Shit, Jonathan muttered. How did they find out already? The reporter spotted them and started moving toward the car like a shark scenting blood. Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. "OMG, turn on Channel 7 now." "Don't get out," Jonathan said. But it was too late. The reporter was already at Grace's window, knocking on the glass. "Miss Miller, is it true you're Emily Walker? The girl who disappeared 18 years ago?" The camera was rolling, the red light accusatory. "How does it feel to be reunited with your father after all these years?" Grace fumbled with her seatbelt, panic rising in her chest. Please, I can't." Jonathan was out of the car in seconds, positioning himself between Grace and the reporter. "No comment. Give us some privacy, please. Mr. Walker, sources say DNA testing is underway. Can you confirm that Grace Miller is your long-lost daughter?" The reporter thrust the microphone toward him. "I said no comment." Jonathan's voice was steel. He opened Grace's door, helped her out, and guided her toward the building entrance with his hand on her back. The reporter followed, shouting questions, the cameraman capturing every moment of their retreat. Inside the lobby, Grace was shaking. How did they know? "We didn't tell anyone except Louise." Jonathan's jaw was tight. "Thomas might have had to make calls, pull records. Word travels fast in this city." He looked at her, concern etched deep in his features. "I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this. It's not your fault." But even as Grace said it, she felt violated, exposed. Her private crisis was now public entertainment. Her phone was ringing non-stop. She turned it off. "Come on," Jonathan said. "Let's get you upstairs." Grace's apartment felt smaller with Jonathan in it, his presence filling the cramped space. She collapsed onto her second-hand couch while he paced, making calls to his lawyers, to his PR team, trying to contain the damage. "I need you to issue a statement," he was saying to someone. "No, nothing detailed. Just that it's a private family matter, and we're requesting privacy while things are sorted out." "Yes, I know that won't stop them, but it's something." Grace turned on the TV, flipping to Channel 7. Her face filled the screen. A photo from her employee badge at Walker Jewelers. The headline running beneath read, "Miracle in Chicago, missing heiress found after 18 years." The anchor's voice was breathless with excitement. In a stunning development, sources close to the Walker family confirmed that Grace Miller, a 23-year-old jewelry store clerk, may be Emily Walker, daughter of billionaire businessman Jonathan Walker. Emily disappeared from Lincoln Park in 2007 at age 5. If confirmed, this would be one of the most remarkable reunions in Chicago history. They cut to old footage. News reports from 18 years ago showing Jonathan and Elizabeth in tears, begging for Emily's safe return. Then photos of Emily as a child. Side by side with current photos of Grace, the resemblance was undeniable. "Experts say DNA testing is currently underway," the anchor continued. "The Walker family has requested privacy, but this story has captivated the nation. We'll bring you updates as they develop." Grace turned off the TV, feeling sick. "This is insane. We don't even have the results yet. What if I'm not Emily? What if this whole thing is just a coincidence?" Jonathan sat beside her, his phone finally silent. "That ring isn't a coincidence. Louise's testimony isn't a coincidence. Helen's letter isn't a coincidence." He looked at her steadily. "You're Emily. I know it in my bones. The DNA test is just confirmation. But what if you're wrong? What if you're so desperate to have your daughter back that you're seeing what you want to see?" Grace's voice cracked. "What if I'm just some random girl who got caught up in your grief? Is that what you think?" Grace didn't answer, because the truth was, she didn't know what she thought anymore. Part of her wanted Jonathan to be right, wanted to belong somewhere, to have a father who looked at her like she mattered. But another part, the part raised by Helen, the part that had built an entire life on a foundation that was now crumbling, that part was terrified. Her phone, still turned off, sat on the coffee table like a bomb. Grace could only imagine the messages piling up. Co-workers, acquaintances, people she barely knew, suddenly pretending to care. "I need to lie down," she said quietly. Jonathan stood. "I'll go." But Grace. He pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote something on the back. "That's my personal cell, not the company line, if you need anything. Anything at all. You call me day or night, okay?" She took the card, nodding. After he left, Grace sat in the silence of her apartment, feeling like a stranger in her own life. She walked to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror, searching for traces of Emily in her reflection. Brown eyes, brown hair, the shape of her nose, the curve of her jaw. Were these features from Elizabeth Walker? From Jonathan? Or were they just her own, belonging to no one special, signifying nothing? She pulled the ring off her finger for the first time in 8 years, since Helen had given it to her on her 15th birthday. Without it, her finger felt naked, wrong, but wearing it felt like wearing evidence of a crime. Grace set the ring on the bathroom counter and walked away. 2 days later, Jonathan's phone rang at 6:47 a.m. He answered on the first ring, his heart pounding. "Mr. Walker, this is Dr. Chen from the testing facility. The results are ready." Jonathan was in his car within minutes, calling Grace as he drove. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep, or maybe tears. "The results are in," he said. "I'm picking you up 10 minutes. She was waiting on the sidewalk when he arrived, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked 2 sizes too big. Her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked young and scared and heartbreakingly vulnerable. They drove to the facility in silence. The same technician from before greeted them with a smile that seemed more genuine this time, less routine. "Dr. Chen will see you in conference room B." The doctor was a small man with graying hair and steady hands. He had a manila folder on the table in front of him, the folder that contained their future. "Thank you both for coming in," he said. "I'll get right to the point. We ran the samples through our most comprehensive testing protocol." He opened the folder, pulling out a document covered in numbers and graphs that meant nothing to Grace. "Based on the analysis of 23 genetic markers, we can confirm with 99.99997% certainty that Grace Miller and Jonathan Walker are biological father and daughter." The room tilted. Grace grabbed the edge of the table. "You're certain?" Jonathan's voice was barely a whisper. "Absolutely certain. Grace is your daughter, Mr. Walker. There's no doubt." Jonathan made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. 18 years of grief, of not knowing, of hoping against hope, all came pouring out in that moment. Grace sat frozen, staring at the document that had just rewritten her entire existence. She was Emily Walker. She was the daughter of a billionaire. She was the little girl who'd disappeared from a park 18 years ago. She was everything and nothing she'd thought she was. Grace. Jonathan lowered his hands, his eyes red but his face transformed by joy. "Emily, you're Emily. You're my daughter." He reached for her hand, and Grace let him take it, feeling his grip, strong and solid and real. "I'm Emily," she whispered, testing the words. They felt foreign in her mouth. "I'm your daughter." And then she was crying too, and Jonathan was pulling her into a hug that felt like coming home and being lost all at once. Outside the conference room, neither of them noticed the receptionist making a phone call. By the time they left the building, the news vans were already there. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and failure. Grace, Emily, whoever she was now, lay in the narrow bed with an IV drip feeding fluids into her dehydrated body. The panic attack had hit her the moment they'd stepped outside the testing facility. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Her vision had tunneled, her chest had tightened, and the last thing she remembered was Jonathan's arms around her as her legs gave out. That was 3 hours ago. Now she stared at the ceiling tiles, counting them over and over because it was easier than thinking about the fact that her DNA had just confirmed she was someone else, someone she didn't remember being. Jonathan sat in the chair beside her bed, looking like he'd aged a decade in a single morning. He hadn't left her side since the ambulance had brought them here. When the nurses had tried to make him wait outside, he'd simply said, "I just got my daughter back after 18 years. I'm not leaving her." They'd let him stay. "You should go home," Grace said, her voice hoarse. "Get some rest." "Not a chance." Jonathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Besides, I've gotten pretty good at hospital vigils. Spent 3 months in rooms like this when Elizabeth was sick." Grace wanted to ask about Elizabeth, about the mother she didn't remember, but the words stuck in her throat. How did you ask someone about their dead wife, about your dead mother? A nurse came in to check Grace's vitals, proclaimed her much improved, and said the doctor would be by shortly to discuss discharge. As soon as she left, Jonathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. "What is it?" "Margaret, my sister. She's seen the news." He showed Grace the text. "We need to talk now. She doesn't sound happy." Margaret's never happy when she's not in control. Jonathan pocketed the phone. "She's been running Walker Jewelers with me since Elizabeth died, actually. She pretty much ran it alone while I was not functional. I owe her a lot, but she can be." He trailed off. "Difficult. That's a diplomatic way of putting it." The doctor arrived. A young woman with tired eyes who declared Grace fit to leave as long as she had someone to stay with her for the next 24 hours. Severe dehydration and acute anxiety. You need rest, fluids, and frankly probably a therapist. "Already on my list," Grace muttered. Jonathan drove Grace back to her apartment, taking a circuitous route to avoid the news vans still camped outside the testing facility. But when they pulled up to her building, there were reporters there too. More than before, at least a dozen, with cameras and microphones and that predatory energy that made Grace's skin crawl. "This is insane," she whispered. "Stay in the car." Jonathan pulled out his phone and made a call. "Martinez, I need security at 2847 North Logan Boulevard. Now yes, I know it's not one of our stores. Just do it." Within 20 minutes, 3 uniformed security guards had arrived and created a barrier between the reporters and Grace's building entrance. Jonathan and Grace made it inside without being mobbed, though the reporters shouted questions the entire way. "Miss Walker, how does it feel to be back with your father?" "Emily, did you know who you really were?" "Mr. Walker, what's your message to the woman who kidnapped your daughter?" Inside Grace's apartment. Jonathan closed the curtains and checked every window to make sure no one could see in. Grace collapsed on her couch, exhausted despite having done nothing but lie in a hospital bed for 3 hours. "I can't stay here," she said. "They know where I live now. They'll never leave me alone." Jonathan sat beside her. "You could stay at my place. The estate has security, gates, walls. They can't get to you there." Grace looked at him. This man who was her father, but still felt like a stranger. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." "I get it. But Grace, Emily." He stopped, frustrated. "What do you want me to call you?" It was a good question. She'd been Grace for 18 years, but Emily was who she'd been first, who she was supposed to be. "I don't know. Both. Neither. Can I be both? You can be whoever you want to be." "That's your choice." Grace pulled a throw pillow into her lap, hugging it like a shield. "I want to remember. I need to remember being Emily, but I don't know how. It's like there's this wall in my head, and everything before age 5 is just gone." Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I could show you things, photos, videos, take you to places we used to go. Maybe something would trigger a memory." Grace thought about it. Part of her was terrified of what she might remember. But another part, a deeper part, desperately wanted to find Emily inside herself. "Okay, but not today. Today I just need to sleep and pretend the world isn't falling apart." "Fair enough." Jonathan stood. "I'll have Martinez and his team stay posted outside. No one gets in without your permission, and I'll be at my office if you need anything. Apparently I have a very angry sister to deal with." After he left, Grace tried to sleep but couldn't. Her mind was racing, her body was exhausted but wired. She turned on the TV and immediately regretted it. Every channel was covering the story. Chicago's miracle reunion, kidnapped heiress found, the ring that brought her home. They dug up everything. Old photos of Emily as a baby, toddler photos, the heartbreaking images of Jonathan and Elizabeth pleading for their daughter's return. They showed the jewelry store where Grace had worked, interviewed her co-workers, Melissa gushing about how sweet and hardworking Grace was, how she never would have guessed she was a missing heiress. Grace turned it off and sat in silence, feeling like she was drowning. Her phone, turned back on now, buzzed constantly. Text messages from people she'd gone to high school with, people she hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanting to catch up. Facebook friend requests from strangers, an email from a literary agent asking if she'd be interested in a book deal. It was obscene, vulture-like. Grace turned the phone off again and went to her bedroom. The shoebox with Helen's things still sat on her dresser. She pulled out Helen's prayer book, running her fingers over the worn leather cover. How many times had Helen held this book? praying for forgiveness, praying for the strength to confess. I loved her with everything I had, Helen had written, but it wasn't enough. Grace's eyes burned with tears because the terrible truth was, she missed Helen, even knowing what Helen had done. Even understanding that Helen had stolen her from her real family, Grace missed the woman who'd raised her, who'd made her breakfast every morning, who'd stayed up late helping with homework, who'd held her when she was sick. How did you reconcile that? How did you love someone who'd committed such a profound betrayal? The next morning, Grace woke to find Jonathan waiting in his car outside her building. She'd agreed to let him show her the past, so she got dressed and went downstairs, slipping past the reporters who'd camped out overnight. Jonathan drove them to a large house in Lincoln Park. Beautiful, elegant, with ivy climbing the brick walls. We lived here when you were born, moved when you were 3, but we came back sometimes. Elizabeth loved this neighborhood. Grace stared at the house, searching her memory for any spark of recognition. Nothing. They drove to the old house next, a sprawling place in Winnetka with a huge backyard. You learned to ride a bike here. Elizabeth and I would push you on the swing set for hours. Still nothing. It was like looking at photos from someone else's life. Finally, Jonathan took her to the park, Lincoln Park, where everything had changed. They walked to the playground, to the exact spot where Emily had last been seen. You loved the swings, Jonathan said quietly. You'd beg to go higher and higher. Elizabeth was always terrified you'd fall, but you were fearless. Grace sat on one of the swings, the chains cold under her hands. She closed her eyes, trying to push past the wall in her mind, trying to find that fearless little girl. And then Jonathan did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone and played a video. Elizabeth's voice filled the air, soft, melodic, singing a lullaby. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Something cracked inside Grace. A feeling, not a memory exactly, but an echo of one. The sensation of being held, of feeling safe, of warm arms and a gentle voice. She started crying without knowing why. I know that song, she whispered. I don't remember learning it, but I know it. Jonathan's voice was rough with emotion. Elizabeth sang it every night, every single night. Grace opened her eyes and looked at the park, at the playground where Emily Walker had disappeared and Grace Miller had been born. And for the first time, she felt the two identities starting to merge. I'm Emily, she said softly, testing the words again. I'm your daughter. Jonathan sat on the swing beside her. Yes, you are. They sat together in silence. Two people trying to bridge 18 years of loss with the fragile hope that maybe, somehow, they could become a family again. What happens now? Grace finally asked. Now, Jonathan said. We figure it out together, one day at a time. Grace looked down at her hand, at the ring she'd put back on this morning, the ring that had started everything. One day at a time, she repeated. It wasn't much, but it was something. Thomas Rivera sat across from Jonathan in the mahogany-paneled office of Walker Jewelers headquarters, a thick file folder between them. The detective looked grim, which meant he'd found something Jonathan wasn't going to like. Just tell me, Jonathan said, pouring himself a scotch. Even though it was only 2 p.m, the past week had been a blur of media frenzy, legal consultations, and watching his daughter, struggle to reconcile 2 lifetimes. Thomas opened the folder. I've been digging deeper into the day. Emily disappeared, cross-referencing witness statements, security footage, phone records. He pulled out a grainy still image from a security camera. This is from a traffic cam 2 blocks from Lincoln Park. September 15th, 2007, 2:47 p.m. 13 minutes after Elizabeth reported Emily missing. Jonathan leaned forward, squinting at the image. It showed a woman walking quickly down the sidewalk, face partially obscured by sunglasses. She wore an expensive-looking coat and carried a designer handbag. Okay, who is she? That's what took me a week to figure out. Thomas pulled out another photo, this one clearer, from a different angle. I enhanced it, ran it through facial recognition. Jonathan, that's Margaret. The glass slipped from Jonathan's hand, scotch spilling across the desk. What? Your sister was there at the park, the day Emily disappeared. Jonathan's mind reeled. That's impossible. Margaret was at a business meeting downtown. She told me. She told the police. She lied. Thomas pulled out more documents. I checked her calendar, her emails, her phone records from that day. The meeting was canceled that morning. She had the entire afternoon free, and according to her credit card records, she bought coffee at a cafe across from Lincoln Park at 2:15 p.m. No. Jonathan stood abruptly. Pacing to the window, Lake Michigan stretched out before him, gray and cold. No, Margaret wouldn't. Why would she? I don't know yet. But there's more. Thomas extracted another document. I found the original police report. One of the responding officers noted that Margaret arrived at the scene unusually quickly, within 15 minutes of the call. She claimed she'd been nearby, shopping. But Jonathan, the store she said she'd been at, they don't have any record of her purchases that day. Jonathan's hands were shaking. He pressed them against the cold glass window, trying to ground himself. Are you saying Margaret had something to do with Emily's disappearance? I'm saying she was there. She lied about it, and we need to find out why. The office door burst open. Margaret herself stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed as always, her face a mask of controlled fury. We need to talk now. Thomas quickly closed the folder, but not before Margaret's sharp eyes caught the security camera photo on top. What is that? Her voice was ice. Margaret, we need to ask you some questions, Thomas said, standing. About what? About the fact that my brother is letting some opportunistic salesgirl upend our entire company based on a ring that could have come from anywhere. Margaret's eyes blazed. Jonathan, I've tried to be patient. I've tried to let you work through this delusion. But enough is enough. The board is getting nervous. Investors are asking questions. We have a company to run. The DNA test confirmed it, Jonathan said quietly, turning to face her. Grace is Emily. It's not a delusion. DNA can be faked. Labs make mistakes. People lie. Margaret crossed her arms. Have you considered that this girl might have gotten her hands on that ring, done her research, and is playing you like a violin? You're a billionaire, Jonathan. You're a target. Grace didn't even know who I was when I walked into that store, Jonathan said. She had no idea about the ring's significance. So she claims. Thomas stepped forward. Margaret, where were you on September 15th, 2007 between 2 and 3 p.m.? The color drained from Margaret's face. Excuse me. It's a simple question. You told police you were at a business meeting, then shopping downtown. But we have evidence that places you near Lincoln Park around the time Emily disappeared. Margaret's jaw tightened. I don't have to answer your questions. You're not a cop anymore, Rivera. You're just a private investigator on my brother's payroll. Margaret, Jonathan's voice was low. Dangerous. Answer the question. I was in the area. Yes. So what? Chicago's a big city. Lots of people were in the area. Why did you lie to the police? Thomas pressed. I didn't lie. I was confused. It was a traumatic day. Memory gets fuzzy. But her voice wavered. Jonathan moved closer to his sister, studying her face. A face he'd known his entire life. You were there. You were at the park when Emily disappeared. Don't be ridiculous. You told me you were downtown. You told Elizabeth you were in meetings. But you were there. Jonathan's voice rose. Why, Margaret? Why were you there? And why did you lie about it? Margaret's composure cracked. Because I knew how it would look. I knew you'd think. She stopped abruptly, realizing she'd said too much. Think what? Jonathan demanded. What would we think, Margaret? She turned away, her shoulders rigid. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I offered to watch Emily that day. Do you remember? Elizabeth was stressed. You were at work. I said I'd take Emily to the park, give Elizabeth a break, but Elizabeth said no. Said she wanted to take Emily herself, that they needed mother-daughter time. Jonathan's blood ran cold. You were supposed to watch her. No. Elizabeth turned me down. So I went to do my own thing. But then I decided to go to the park anyway, just to check on them, to see if maybe Elizabeth had changed her mind and wanted help after all. And, Thomas prompted. Margaret's hands were shaking now, and I saw Elizabeth on her phone, distracted. Emily was on the swings by herself, maybe 30 feet away. I was going to go say hello, but then she trailed off. But then what? Jonathan's voice was deadly quiet. But then I thought, let Elizabeth handle it. She didn't want my help anyway. Margaret's voice broke. So I left, I walked away, and 20 minutes later, my phone rang with the news that Emily was missing. The room fell silent, except for the sound of traffic far below. You saw her? Jonathan whispered. You saw Emily alone and vulnerable, and you walked away. I didn't know she was going to disappear. How could I have known? But you knew something happened. You knew you'd seen her alone right before she vanished. And you said nothing. Jonathan's fury was building. For 18 years, you let us think there were no witnesses. You let the investigation go cold. You let Elizabeth die thinking she was the only one who'd failed our daughter. I was protecting you, Margaret shouted. If I'd told the truth, you would have blamed me. Everyone would have blamed me. And for what? I didn't take Emily. I didn't make her disappear. I just didn't interfere when I should have. Thomas pulled out another photo, the one Louise had described, of a well-dressed woman watching from the trees. Helen Miller saw someone matching your description, standing in the shadows, watching. She thought that person had abandoned Emily. That's why she took her, because she thought Emily had been deliberately left there. Margaret staggered backward, gripping the edge of Jonathan's desk. No, that's not. I didn't abandon her. I was angry at Elizabeth for rejecting my help. I wanted to teach her a lesson about how hard it is to watch a kid alone, so I stayed in the shadows for a few minutes, watching, waiting for Elizabeth to panic when she realized Emily had wandered off. Then I was going to swoop in and be the hero. Her voice cracked completely. But Emily wasn't just wandering. Someone took her. And by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. She was gone. Jonathan felt like he was going to be sick. You stood there. You watched our daughter get kidnapped because you wanted to prove a point to Elizabeth. I didn't see Helen take her. I swear to God, Jonathan, I didn't see it happen. I was watching Elizabeth, waiting for her to notice. When I looked back, Emily was just gone. I panicked and left. I didn't know what to do. You could have told the truth, Jonathan roared. You could have helped the investigation. Helen Miller was there. You could have identified her. We could have found Emily years ago. Margaret was crying now, mascara running down her face. I know. I've lived with it every single day. Every time you fell apart. Every time Elizabeth looked at me with those broken eyes. Every time I signed another expansion deal for the company. I knew it was my fault, Thomas spoke up. The company? That's why you're fighting this so hard now, isn't it? If Emily comes back, if she's declared Jonathan's heir, you lose everything you've built. Margaret's silence was damning. Jonathan stared at his sister. This woman he'd trusted, relied on, loved his entire life. The woman who'd held his hand at Elizabeth's funeral. The woman who'd kept Walker Jewelers running when he couldn't. The woman who'd destroyed his family to satisfy her own petty jealousy. Get out, he said quietly. Jonathan, please, get out. His voice shattered the air. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear your voice. You're done. You're off the board. You're out of the company. You're out of my life. You can't do this. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you watched my daughter get kidnapped and said nothing. Jonathan turned his back on her. Thomas, contact our lawyers. I want Margaret removed from all positions of authority immediately. I want her investigated for obstruction of justice. And if there's any way to press criminal charges, I want to know about it. Jonathan, I'm begging you. Security. Jonathan's voice rang out. Within moments, 2 guards appeared in the doorway. Escort Ms. Walker from the building. She's no longer welcome here. Margaret looked at Thomas, then at the guards, then back at Jonathan. Her face crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back 18 years, Jonathan said without turning around. The guards led Margaret away. Her sobs echoed down the hallway until they faded into nothing. Jonathan stood at the window, watching the city below. Thomas stayed quiet, giving him space. Finally, Jonathan spoke. Emily needs to know. She deserves to know everything. Are you sure? This will destroy her. She's already been destroyed once. She survived. Jonathan's reflection in the window looked 10 years older. And this time she won't be alone. This time she'll have me. Emily. She was trying to think of herself as Emily now. though it still felt like wearing someone else's clothes, sat in the back room of Jonathan's Lake Forest estate, staring at the folder Thomas had handed her 20 minutes ago. She hadn't opened it yet, just held it in her lap like it might explode. "You don't have to look at it right now," Jonathan said gently. He sat across from her in a leather armchair, worry etched deep in his features. "We can wait. Take all the time you need." But Emily shook her head. "No, I need to know. I need to know everything." She opened the folder. The first photo was the security camera image. Margaret walking away from Lincoln Park, her face partially hidden but unmistakable. Then came the documents, credit card receipts, phone records, witness statements, and finally, the transcript of Margaret's confession from yesterday. Emily read it all in silence, her hands trembling more with each page. When she finished, she looked up at Jonathan with tears streaming down her face. She was there, your sister was there, and she just watched. "I'm so sorry." Jonathan's voice was rough. "If I'd known, if I'd had any idea. Helen took me because she thought I'd been abandoned. Because Margaret made it look like I'd been abandoned." Emily's voice rose. She stood in the shadows like some kind of predator, waiting to swoop in and be the hero. And when I disappeared, she said nothing. She let everyone suffer. You, Elizabeth. Me. For 18 years because she was too much of a coward to admit what she'd done. Jonathan moved to sit beside her, but Emily stood abruptly, pacing the room. Energy, rage, grief, something explosive, was building inside her, and she needed to move or she'd shatter. Does she understand what she did? Does she have any idea what those 18 years cost me? Emily's voice cracked. I grew up thinking I was nobody, the kid of a single mother who cleaned houses for a living. I wore secondhand clothes and ate generic cereal and went to bed hungry more nights than I can count, because Helen was working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. And the whole time, I had a father who was a billionaire. I had a mother who loved me. I had a real family that was torn apart because your sister wanted to play mind games. I know, Jonathan said quietly. There's nothing I can say that will make this better. And Helen, Emily stopped pacing, wrapping her arms around herself. Helen saw me alone and thought I'd been abandoned, because that's exactly what it looked like. Margaret created the situation that made Helen think taking me was okay. She's responsible for all of it. The lawyers say there might be grounds for criminal charges. Negligence, at minimum. Possibly obstruction of justice for lying to the police. Jonathan's hands clenched into fists. She'll pay for this, Emily. I promise you that. I don't want her to pay. Emily's voice broke. I want my mother back. I want Elizabeth. I want those 18 years back. But I can't have any of that. Can I? Because time doesn't work that way and people don't come back from the dead. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice eerily calm. I want to talk to her. Jonathan looked up sharply. To Margaret. Yes. Emily, I don't think that's a good idea. She's not welcome in this house anymore. I won't subject you to. I need to see her. Emily's jaw was set in a way that reminded Jonathan painfully of Elizabeth, when she'd made up her mind about something. I need to look her in the eye and ask her why. I need to hear it from her, not from transcripts and police reports. I need her to face what she did. Jonathan studied his daughter's face. So much strength there, so much pain. Okay, but I'm calling her here. And Thomas and I will be in the room with you. Non-negotiable. Deal. Margaret arrived an hour later, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her normally perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup minimal, her designer clothes wrinkled. When she walked into the library where they'd gathered, she stopped short at the sight of Emily. You came, Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sit down, Jonathan commanded, gesturing to a chair positioned in front of Emily. Like this was an interrogation, which in a way it was. Margaret sat, her hands folded in her lap. She looked small, diminished. Nothing like the powerful, composed woman who'd run Walker Jewelers for the past 15 years. Emily stared at her for a long moment. This woman who was supposed to be her aunt, who'd held her as a baby, who'd been at every family gathering until everything fell apart. Do you remember me? Emily finally asked. From before, when I was 5. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Yes, You were wearing a yellow sundress the last time I saw you. You just lost your first tooth and you kept sticking your tongue in the gap. You showed me the ring your father had made for you and said you were going to be a princess when you grew up. And then you watched someone take me. I didn't see Helen take you. I swear, Emily. I was watching Elizabeth. Stop. Emily held up her hand. Stop making excuses. You were there. You saw me alone. And instead of helping, instead of doing what any decent human being would do, you used me as a pawn in some sick game to make yourself feel important. Margaret flinched like she'd been slapped. Do you know what it's like to grow up with nothing? Emily continued, her voice steady and cold. To watch your mother, the woman you think is your mother, work herself to death trying to provide for you. To go to school in clothes that don't fit and have other kids make fun of you because you can't afford the field trips or the yearbook or the graduation gown. I'm sorry, I'm not finished. Emily leaned forward. Helen loved me, in her broken, damaged way. She loved me. She held me when I had nightmares. She stayed up all night when I was sick. She sacrificed everything to give me a life. And yes, what she did was wrong. She stole me from my real family, but she did it because you made her think I'd been abandoned. You created the situation that destroyed 4 lives. Mine, Helen's, Jonathan's, and Elizabeth's. Margaret was openly crying now. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted Elizabeth to see how hard it was, to appreciate my help. I was going to grab you the moment she noticed you were gone. I was going to be the hero, but I looked away for just a minute, and when I looked back, you weren't there anymore. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. You could have told the truth, Emily said. You could have told the police that you'd seen me right before I disappeared. That there might have been someone watching. You could have given them Helen's description. We could have been reunited within weeks instead of 18 years. I know. God, I know. I've replayed that day 1,000 times, wishing I could go back and do it differently. But you didn't. And Elizabeth died thinking she was the only one responsible. She died carrying guilt that should have been shared with you. Emily's voice turned to steel. You let her die alone in that guilt, because you were too much of a coward to face what you'd done. Margaret's sobs filled the room. I loved her. I loved Elizabeth. I loved you. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. But we did get hurt, Emily said quietly. We all got hurt, and nothing you say or do will ever change that. Thomas, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. The police want to press charges. Obstruction of justice, filing a false police report, potentially child endangerment. The Day thinks they have a case. Margaret looked up, mascara streaking her face. I'll accept whatever punishment comes. I deserve it. Yes, you do, Jonathan said coldly. You destroyed my family. You let my wife die in agony. You stole 18 years from me and my daughter. And you did it all to protect yourself. What do you want from me? Margaret's voice was broken. What can I possibly do to make this right? Emily stood, looking down at the woman who'd once been her aunt. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. The damage is done. Elizabeth is gone. Those 18 years are gone. Helen is gone. We can't get any of it back. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You asked me if I remember you. I don't. I have no memory of you, no connection to you. Nothing. You're just the person who destroyed my life before it even really started. And I want you to live with that. I want you to spend every single day for the rest of your life knowing that you did this. That all of this pain, all of this loss, it's on you. Emily walked out of the room, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Jonathan stood, his eyes cold as he looked at his sister. Thomas will give you the details about the criminal investigation. Your lawyers should contact the DA directly. As for the company, your termination is effective immediately. You'll receive severance as required by your contract. But nothing more. All your shares will be bought out at market value. You're no longer a part of Walker Jewelers or the Walker family. Jonathan. Please. Margaret reached for him. He stepped back, avoiding her touch. Security will escort you out. Don't come back here. Don't call. Don't write. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a sister anymore. Thomas called for the guards. Margaret stood on shaking legs, looking at Jonathan one last time. I hope someday you can forgive me. I won't, Jonathan said simply. And neither will Emily. You'll have to live with that. As the guards led Margaret away, Jonathan stood alone in the library, exhausted and heartsick. Through the window, he could see Emily sitting on the terrace, her arms wrapped around her knees, looking out at the lake. He went to her, sitting beside her in silence. After a long moment, Emily spoke. "I should hate her more than I do, but mostly I just feel empty. That's okay? Whatever you feel is okay. Is it over now? The investigation? The confrontation? Is it finally over?" Jonathan took her hand. "The legal stuff might drag on for a while, but the hard part, yeah, I think it's over." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder, the first time she'd initiated physical contact with him. "I want to move forward. I want to stop looking back at all the things we lost and start looking at what we still have." "What do we have?" Jonathan asked softly. Emily squeezed his hand. "Each other. We have each other. And maybe that's enough." They sat together as the sun set over Lake Michigan. Two people who'd been broken by the past, finally ready to build something new. 3 weeks after the confrontation with Margaret, Emily stood in front of a judge in Cook County Courthouse. The small courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and a handful of lawyers representing both sides of a case that had captivated the nation. Margaret Walker sat at the defense table, flanked by 2 expensive attorneys who'd been hired by what remained of her personal fortune. She wore a simple navy suit, none of the designer labels she'd once favored, and her face was pale and drawn. When she looked at Emily, there was nothing but grief in her eyes. The charges were serious: obstruction of justice, filing a false police report, and criminal negligence resulting in the kidnapping of a minor. The Day had pushed hard for maximum sentencing, arguing that Margaret's 18-year deception had caused immeasurable harm. But it was Emily's testimony that would determine Margaret's fate. Emily took the stand, her hand shaking slightly as she placed it on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Jonathan sat in the front row, and she drew strength from his steady presence. The prosecutor stood. "Miss Walker, can you tell the court how Margaret Walker's actions affected your life?" Emily took a breath. "Margaret's choice to stay silent stole 18 years from me. I grew up believing I was Grace Miller, daughter of a housekeeper, when I was actually Emily Walker, daughter of a family that loved me desperately. I grew up in poverty when I could have had every advantage. I lost my mother, Elizabeth, because Margaret let her die believing she was solely responsible for my disappearance. And what would you like to see happen to the defendant?" Emily was quiet for a moment, looking directly at Margaret. "I want her to face the consequences of what she did, but I also want something else." She turned to the judge. "I want her to help other families. There are thousands of cases like mine. Children who disappeared. Families still searching. Margaret knows what it's like to watch that pain and do nothing. Maybe she can use that knowledge to actually help instead of hurt." The courtroom buzzed with surprise. Even the judge looked intrigued. "What exactly are you proposing, Miss Walker?" "Community service, a lot of it. I want Margaret to work with organizations that search for missing children. I want her to use her resources, her connections, her business knowledge to help families find answers. I want her to spend the rest of her life making up for what she destroyed." Margaret was crying silently, her shoulders shaking. The prosecutor looked frustrated. "Your Honor, with all due respect, the state believes—" "I know what the state believes," the judge interrupted. "But the victim has a right to be heard, Miss Walker. You understand that what you're proposing is significantly more lenient than what the prosecution is asking for." "I do, but punishment doesn't bring back the years we lost. It doesn't bring back Elizabeth. It doesn't undo the pain." Emily's voice was steady. "But maybe, Margaret can prevent this from happening to someone else. Maybe she can turn something terrible into something that actually matters." The judge considered this. "The court will take a brief recess to consider sentencing options." 2 hours later, the judge returned with his decision. Margaret would serve 5 years probation, perform 5,000 hours of community service with missing children organizations, and establish a foundation in Elizabeth Walker's name dedicated to solving cold cases of missing children. She would be required to donate a significant portion of her assets to the foundation and work personally with families seeking answers. It wasn't the harsh sentence the prosecution had wanted, but it was something that might actually make a difference. As they left the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Emily and Jonathan pushed through without comment, but Margaret paused at the bottom of the steps. I don't deserve Emily's mercy, she said to the cameras. I don't deserve her compassion, but I promise you, I promise everyone watching, that I will spend every day for the rest of my life trying to earn it. I will help every family I can. I will fight for every missing child, and I will never, ever forget what my cowardice cost. 1 month later, Emily sat in the office of Walker Jewelers' corporate headquarters, the same office where Margaret had once wielded power. Jonathan had offered it to her, but Emily had chosen a smaller space down the hall. She wasn't ready for that kind of symbolism yet. She was officially Emily Rose Walker now. The name change had been finalized, though she'd kept Grace as her middle name. I was Grace for 18 years, she'd told Jonathan. That person deserves to be remembered too. There was a knock on her door. Jonathan poked his head in. Got a minute. Always. He came in carrying a large cardboard box. I've been going through some of Elizabeth's things. I thought you might want to see these. Emily's throat tightened. What are they? Letters? Elizabeth wrote to you every year on your birthday. She never sent them, obviously, but she wrote them anyway. I think she needed to believe you'd read them someday. Jonathan set the box on Emily's desk and quietly left, giving her privacy. Emily opened the first envelope with trembling hands. It was dated September 2008, 1 year after her disappearance, 3 years before Elizabeth's death. My darling Emily, you would be 6 years old today. I wonder if you like chocolate cake or vanilla. I wonder if you still hate wearing shoes. I wonder if you're safe, if you're loved, if you're happy. Your father bought you a present anyway, a stuffed elephant because you used to collect them. It's sitting in your room, waiting for you to come home. Everything is waiting for you to come home. I'm sorry I looked away. I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry for everything. Come back to us, baby. Please come back. Love always. Mama Emily read through letter after letter, watching Elizabeth's hope slowly fade as the years passed. The later letters were darker, more desperate, filled with self-blame and crushing guilt. The last letter was dated March 2010, 3 months before Elizabeth died. My Emily, you're 8 now, or you would be, if you're still alive. I have to believe you are. I have to believe you're out there somewhere, living a life, even if it's not with us. I'm not doing well, sweetheart. The doctors say my body is sick, but I know the truth. It's my heart that's broken. It broke the day you disappeared and it never healed. I hope wherever you are, someone is loving you the way I wanted to love you. I hope you're safe and warm and happy. I hope you have birthday cakes and bedtime stories and someone who sings you lullabies. I'm so sorry I couldn't be that person for you. I'm so sorry I let you down. If you're reading this someday, please know that I loved you. Every single day, I loved you. And I'll keep loving you even after I'm gone. Your mama, Elizabeth. Emily set the letter down, tears streaming down her face. Elizabeth had died thinking she'd failed her daughter, had died carrying guilt that belonged to Margaret. Not her. There was a soft knock. Jonathan entered again, seeing Emily's tears. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No. Emily wiped her eyes. I needed to see these. I needed to know she never stopped loving me, even when she couldn't find me. Jonathan sat beside her. She loved you more than anything in this world. So do I. Emily looked at her father, this man she was still getting to know, who'd spent 18 years searching for her in his own way. I love you too. It's weird to say it to someone who's basically a stranger, but it's true. You're my dad, and I love you. Jonathan pulled her into a hug, and they stayed that way for a long time. That evening, Emily and Jonathan drove to the cemetery where Elizabeth was buried. Emily had never been there before, had been too overwhelmed, too afraid. But now, holding Elizabeth's letters, she was ready. They stood in front of the simple headstone, Elizabeth Ann Walker, beloved wife and mother, 1972-2010. Emily knelt, placing a bouquet of jasmine flowers, Elizabeth's favorite, on the grave. Hi, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to come. I'm sorry for a lot of things, actually. Sorry you died thinking you'd failed me. Sorry I don't remember you the way I should. Sorry we lost so much time. Jonathan stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder. But I want you to know something, Emily continued. I'm okay. I'm here, and I'm safe, and I have Dad, and I read your letters, every single one, and I know you loved me. That's enough. That has to be enough. The wind rustled through the trees, and Emily imagined it was Elizabeth's voice, singing that lullaby one more time. "I'm going to make you proud," Emily said. "I'm going to live the life you wanted for me, and I'm going to make sure other families don't have to go through what we did. Margaret's going to help with that." Actually, weird, right? But maybe some good can come from all this pain. She stood, brushing grass off her knees. Jonathan handed her a single rose, from Emily's ring design, recreated in real flowers. Emily placed it on the grave. "I love you, Mom. I wish I remembered you better, but I love you." They walked back to the car in silence. As they drove away, Emily looked back one last time at the cemetery. "Do you think she knows?" she asked Jonathan. "Wherever she is? Do you think she knows I'm okay?" Jonathan reached over and squeezed her hand. "Yeah, I think she knows, and I think she's finally at peace." Emily nodded, letting herself believe it, because some things had to be true, even if you couldn't prove them. Some things you just had to have faith in. 6 months had passed since the courthouse, since the cemetery, since Emily had finally begun to feel like she belonged somewhere. Autumn had arrived in Chicago, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson, and the air carried that particular crispness that promised winter wasn't far behind. Emily stood in front of her bathroom mirror, getting ready for what Jonathan had called a special day. She'd learned not to ask too many questions when he got that mysterious tone in his voice. In the past half year, he'd surprised her with everything from a trip to Paris to a fully funded scholarship program in Elizabeth's name for kids from low-income families. She was still getting used to having a father who wanted to give her the world. The ring sat on her finger, the ring that had started everything. She touched it now, the sapphire catching the morning light. She'd considered putting it away, storing it in a safe somewhere, but that felt wrong. This ring had brought her home. It deserved to be worn. Her phone buzzed. "Jonathan, ready? I'm outside." Emily grabbed her jacket and headed downstairs. She'd moved into a new apartment in River North. Nothing extravagant, despite Jonathan's protests that she could live anywhere she wanted. She needed to find her own way, build her own life, even if that life now included being a walker. Jonathan's car was idling at the curb, Martinez behind the wheel as always. Jonathan himself was in the back seat, looking more relaxed than Emily had ever seen him. The past 6 months had been good for him too. The lines around his eyes were softer now, and he smiled more easily. "Where are we going?" Emily asked as she slid into the seat beside him. "You'll see." They drove through the city, past the downtown skyline and the lakefront parks, into neighborhoods Emily recognized from her childhood as Grace. Martinez turned onto familiar streets, and Emily felt her stomach tighten with recognition. "We're going to the park." "We are," Jonathan confirmed. "If that's okay with you." Emily nodded. She'd been back to Lincoln Park several times since that first visit with Jonathan. Each time, it got a little easier. The memories were coming back slowly, fragments mostly, nothing complete. But the fear had faded. The park was just a park now, not a crime scene. When they arrived, Emily was surprised to see a small gathering near the playground. Thomas Rivera was there, along with Louise Miller, who'd become an unexpected ally and friend, and standing slightly apart from them, looking uncertain and small, was Margaret. Emily's steps faltered. "What is she doing here?" "She asked to come," Jonathan said quietly, "to show you something. I told her it was your choice whether you wanted to see it." Emily studied Margaret from a distance. She looked different, smaller somehow, less polished. She'd been true to her word about the foundation. The Elizabeth Walker Foundation had already helped reunite 3 families with missing children, and there were a dozen more cases in progress. Margaret worked there full-time now. No salary, just penance. "Okay," Emily said finally. "I'll hear her out." They walked over to the group. Margaret's eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying, but she stood straight when Emily approached. "Thank you for coming," Margaret said. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you." "You don't," Emily agreed. "But I'm here, so talk." Margaret gestured to a spot near the swings where a small bronze plaque had been mounted on a stone marker. "I wanted to do something, to acknowledge what happened here, to honor Elizabeth, I don't know, to try to make something permanent out of all this pain." Emily walked over to read the plaque. In memory of Elizabeth Ann Walker, 1972-2010, and in celebration of Emily Rose Walker's return, may all lost children find their way home. May all searching families find peace. May love always prevail over loss below. It was a list of names, children still missing, cases still open. The Elizabeth Walker Foundation's first official memorial. Emily traced her fingers over her mother's name, then over her own. It's beautiful. It's not enough, Margaret said quietly. Nothing will ever be enough. But I wanted you to know that I think about Elizabeth every single day. I think about what I took from her, what I took from you and your father. And I'm trying so hard to make something good come from the worst thing I've ever done. Emily turned to face Margaret. 6 months ago, she would have been filled with rage. But time had softened the sharp edges of her anger, worn them down into something more manageable. Sadness, mostly, and a strange kind of pity. I don't forgive you, Emily said. I'm not sure I ever will, but I see what you're doing. I see you trying. That matters. Margaret's breath hitched. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what I need to move forward. Emily glanced at Jonathan, who was watching the exchange with careful eyes. We all need to move forward. Louise stepped forward then, pulling Emily into a hug. Helen would be proud of you, you know. Both versions of your mama would be proud. Emily hugged her back. I hope so. I know so. You took something broken and made it beautiful. That's what both your mothers wanted for you. After the others left, Emily and Jonathan stayed behind. They walked to the swings where everything had changed 18 years ago. Emily sat on one, the chains creaking softly, while Jonathan took the one beside her. Do you remember? He asked. Anything from that day? Emily closed her eyes, reaching back into the fog of her earliest memories. I remember being scared. I remember calling for Mom, for Elizabeth, and she wasn't there. And then, she paused. Then there were arms around me. Someone picked me up, a woman's voice saying it would be okay, that she'd help me find my mama. Helen, Emily confirmed. She saved me from the fear, even if what she did was wrong. In that moment, she saved me from feeling abandoned. Margaret created that fear in the first place. I know, but Helen didn't know that. She saw a scared little girl and did what she thought was right. It's complicated. Emily opened her eyes, looking at her father. Everything about this is complicated. They swung gently, side by side, watching the park come alive with afternoon activity. Families everywhere. Mothers pushing strollers. Fathers teaching kids to ride bikes. Teenagers laughing on benches. Life continuing the way it always had, oblivious to the tragedy and triumph that had unfolded in this very spot. I have something for you, Jonathan said. Reaching into his jacket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Emily's heart skipped. What is it? Open it. Inside was a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a pendant. The pendant was a tiny pair of swings, intricately detailed, with 2 small diamonds hanging where the seats would be. 1 diamond for Emily, Jonathan explained. 1 for Grace. Both parts of you. Together. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Dad? It was the first time she'd called him that, without thinking about it first, without testing the word in her mouth. It just came out naturally, easily, like it had always been there. Jonathan noticed too. His own eyes got suspiciously bright. Do you like it? I love it. Emily put it on, the pendant resting against her heart. I love it, and I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. They sat there as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Emily looked at the ring on her finger, then at the necklace around her neck, then at her father beside her. This ring was supposed to make me a princess, she said softly, remembering the little girl she'd been. But it did something better. It brought me home. You were always home, Jonathan said. Even when we couldn't find each other, you were always home, because home isn't a place. It's the people who love you. Emily reached over and took his hand. Then I've been home all along, with Helen, even though it started wrong. And now with you, I've always been loved. I've always been home. Always, Jonathan agreed. They stood, ready to leave the park behind. As they walked to the car, Emily looked back one last time at the playground, at the swings, at the bronze plaque honoring her mother. The past was there, preserved in metal and memory, but the future stretched out ahead of them, full of possibility. Emily Grace Walker, both names, both identities, both parts of her story, was finally whole, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. As they drove away, Emily watched the park disappear in the side mirror. The swings moved gently in the wind, empty but waiting for the next child who needed to feel the wind in their hair and the joy of flying, even if just for a moment, waiting for the next family to write their own story, whatever that story might be. And somewhere, Emily liked to think, Elizabeth was watching and smiling, and finally at peace, because her daughter had come home.